guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new entitled people content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
The first story is titled, HOA sued me for a fence on my private property. Claims it's illegal. Living in a community with a homeowners association, HOA, can be both a blessing and a curse. On one hand, it helps maintain the overall appearance of the neighborhood, but on the other hand, it can sometimes feel like they are going out of their way to make life difficult for residents. When I moved into my new home, I was required to join the HOA and follow their rules and regulations. I didn't think much of it until I decided to build a fence in my backyard to provide a safe and secure area for my dogs to play in. I knew that the HOA had specific guidelines about what types of fences were allowed and where they could be placed, so I filled out a request form and waited for their approval. After several weeks of waiting, I finally received notice that I had been approved to build a fence. However, they didn't specify where it should be placed, so I hired an assessor to determine the property line and avoid any issues with the HOA. Based on the assessment, I started building my fence within the specified guidelines. A month later, I received a letter in the mail from the HOA, stating that I had violated their guidelines and was facing daily fines. However, they didn't specify what the issue was, and I had no idea what I had done wrong. I tried contacting the HOA multiple times but never received a response. As a result, the fines kept piling up, and I was becoming increasingly concerned. After a few weeks of silence, I received a notice of a court date, stating that I could lose my house if I didn't pay the fines. I was horrified and didn't know what to do, so I hired a lawyer to help me navigate the situation. The lawyer contacted the HOA's lawyer and tried to understand the situation. It turned out that the HOA was claiming that my fence was 3 inches over the property line, and they had been fining me according to their bylaws. They believed that my fence was illegal and needed to be removed. My lawyer was shocked by the HOA's actions and promised to fight the case in court. He obtained an assessor report that showed where the line was and proved that I had placed the fence where I believed the property line to be. He also argued that the HOA had not followed their own procedures and that I was being wrongly accused. The case went to court, and it was a long and drawn-out process. The lawyers argued back and forth about bylaws, policies, and procedures, but my lawyer was well prepared and presented the evidence that the HOA had not followed their own procedures. I was relieved when the judge ruled in my favor, but the HOA was not happy with the decision and vowed to take further action. A few weeks after the court ruling, I received a notice that the HOA was going to sue me for the cost of removing the fence, claiming that it was an illegal structure. My lawyer advised me to counter-sue for the money I had paid in fines, and I agreed. The second legal battle was even more intense than the first, with both parties digging in their heels and refusing to budge. It was a stressful time for me, and I didn't know how it would all turn out. However, after several more weeks of legal wrangling, we finally reached a settlement. The HOA agreed to drop their suit and pay me back the money I had paid in fines, and I agreed to remove the fence and build a new one within the guidelines. It was a bittersweet victory for me. Update: after the legal battles were finally over, I thought I could finally relax and put the whole ordeal behind me. However, I soon found out that the HOA was not willing to let go of the situation. One evening, I was at home with my family when we heard a loud commotion outside. When I went to investigate, I saw a group of men from the HOA tearing down my fence, claiming that it was illegal and needed to be removed. I was furious and demanded that they stop, but they refused to listen and continued to destroy my fence. I immediately called my lawyer, and he advised me to call the police and file a report. I did as he suggested, and the police arrived at the scene and tried to stop the men from causing any further damage. It was a chaotic scene, and I was worried that the situation would escalate further. However, as the police officers were trying to control the situation, one of the men from the HOA suddenly fell to the ground, clutching his chest. It turned out that he had a heart attack and needed immediate medical attention. The ambulance arrived on the scene, and he was rushed to the hospital. After the incident, the HOA tried to reach out to me to apologize and make amends. They claimed that the situation had gotten out of hand and that they never intended for it to escalate to that level. They also offered to pay for the damage caused to my property and compensate me for any losses. Although I was hesitant to accept their apology, I knew that it was time to move on from the situation and put it all behind me. I agreed to their terms, and they followed through with their promise, paying for the damages caused to my property. The entire experience left me shaken and wary of the HOA, but I was glad that it was finally over. I learned the hard way that dealing with an HOA can be a nightmare, and it's important to know your rights and fight for what you believe in. The next story is entitled Military Recruiter Tried to Insult Me for Not Wanting to Join the Marines when I was 18. I'll start off with some background. I attended a public high school, in the US, for context, for less than a school year to finish my basic education. Before that, I was homeschooled and living in a car, basically on the beach with my mom. I was put in foster care for a lot of reasons, so it was a lot of change for me at the time. The last time I was in an actual school setting I was 12 years old, so it was all very, very new. So, I had never been approached by a military recruiter before or dealt with them. So, Sergeant Nincompoop, that's what I'll call him, came to my English class to try to brainwash the kiddos and make them think that the US military is fantastic. You get to travel the world. You get financial independence and tons of benefits. He was spewing this bull crap, that I wasn't really listening to, but that I found fascinating because I had never witnessed such a spectacle. Sometime, during his spiel, we had to fill out a form. I remember answering honestly. I believe I had said I don't have any interest in joining any faction of the military. But, I did leave my real number when they asked for it, thinking that it had never been actually called. I don't recall detailing my life plans or anything on the form. I don't exactly recall leaving my number, but, since he called my number afterwards I'm guessing I did put it on the form. I was respectful during the lecture, but never had expressed any interest in joining the military because, I don't agree with a lot of what the US military did do and does abroad. I got a call from Nincompoop after I graduated, and I told him that I wasn't interested in joining the military, believing that he wouldn't call me again. He had said something about keeping my options open to the military, but I thought that was the last of it. I didn't think to block the number because, I didn't think it would become an issue. One day about a week later or so, my boyfriend and I just having a nice day out at our local Chinatown, looking at earthenware jars of bean paste and wondering how a shop that smells of mothballs and exclusively sells 1980s baby clothes in mint condition, yet has no one inside stays open in this day and age. I get a call. I had no idea who it was from. Sergeant Nincompoop was not in my contacts. So out of not knowing, I picked it up. He's drilling me about what I'm doing after high school, and I tell him, I'm looking for a non-military job to help me get on my feet. At the time I had just moved in with my boyfriend. So, Nincompoop asks what that would be. I tell him, I don't know, maybe Starbucks or anything. At the time I was just trying to get any job, just as most teenagers would who have no work experience. Nincompoop then goes on an A-level rant that starts with asking me if I really want to waste my entire life working at Starbucks, and I said, I don't know, probably not. Of course, the answer is no, but what do you expect an 18-year-old girl to say to a 30-year-old man yelling at her over the phone? Yes, a first job is a logical lifelong career choice unless you join the military. So, he's then aggressively asking where I'll be in 5 years, and I tell him, I don't really know for sure. He's getting all antsy because I'm not telling him my life plans, and he's explaining how the military can essentially set a plan for my life. This goes on and on. My boyfriend is there the whole time and was as entertained as I was. I told him I have no interest in joining the military, repeatedly, that I'm not interested in the fact that they can pay for college, and I'm not joining the military no matter what. So, this man tells me how I'm wasting my life for not joining the military at 18, and how that I'm setting myself for failure and working at Starbucks for my entire life, and then angrily hangs up the phone, not without his last quip stating that I'm wasting my opportunity. My boyfriend and I laughed about it afterwards, called him a loser, and we talked about how much a deranged douche he was on the phone whilst eating Chinese candy. A funny and light story, but thought I'd share regardless. Also, military recruiters are something else. They've also literally tried to recruit me whilst I'm at work before, but no one has been as rude or as belligerent as that one guy from when I was 18. Edit. I'm 22 now, so I haven't heard from the guy in about 4 years. Just thought I'd share the story. The next story is titled, Road Karen Blocks Traffic in the Most Petty Way. So, this just happened yesterday, and I thought I would share this ridiculous entitlement. I work as a parcel courier for a company that deals in internationally shipped packages, and I was working my route as normal and was about an hour into my route and I was in a particularly good mood. Until I reached an intersection with said road Karen. For context, the street I was on is very odd. On one side of the road are residential houses and some buildings with businesses and apartments on the top floors, and on the other side was a state highway that has a lot of traffic coming off the highway, as well as cars coming from other streets to get on said highway since it's one of the only points of entry unless you want to take a detour. It's a big pain in the ass and the infrastructure is not ideal, but everyone knows what to do to ensure a quick and effective commute. The intersection I mentioned is somewhat narrow due to all the snow that has accumulated. Road Karen is on the left turn lane at the front of traffic, and a semi-truck is making a left turn onto the street since he wanted to get on the highway. This is when the entitlement starts. As I have said, the road is narrow due to the snow, and the semi couldn't turn unless Road Karen reversed. I saw this coming, but the semi-truck driver made the mistake of thinking this boss would do anything a rational person would do and decided to make his turn. As expected, he couldn't complete his turn due to the Karen mobile. Every driver behind Karen started reversing because, people got places to be, and this semi gotta go. I shit you not, there is about 15 feet of space for her to back up and allow this gentleman and his giant semi to complete his turn. What does Karen do? You guessed it, nothing. She sits there, about 15 seconds pass, and the semi driver gives her a couple of honks because at this point, it's too late for him to do anything. So now this semi and his trailer are blocking the intersection, and traffic is starting to build up from people coming off the highway and people trying to get on the highway. Guy honks his horn longer this time, and this degenerate boss puts her car in ducking park and goes on her phone. Luckily, I didn't have to turn at that intersection and there was a way to maneuver around the semi at a green light, but it was extremely dangerous because the people turning left couldn't see us trying to pass. So, I get to the front and the light turns red, leaving me side by side to Karen. I get out of my van pissed as I see her tapping away on her phone and knock on her window. She looks up at me and I yell and gesture to let her know that she has to back up, the truck has nowhere to go. Trailer trash granny keeps her windows rolled up, starts saying what I made out as, I was here first, pointing and gesturing angrily to the ground. At this point the semi-driver starts inching closer and closer to her to scare her to back off, but she doesn't budge. I yell at her this time, he can't go anywhere, you have to back up. Traffic is completely blocked off here. She ignores me and I look up to the semi-driver, throw my hands up and shrugged my shoulders to let him know the witch ain't moving. The light turned green, and I went on my way. I made a few more deliveries and about 10 to 15 minutes have passed since the start of this whole debacle and went back to the street on the opposite side of the clog to see if it was resolved and yup, you guessed it, traffic was completely clogged and ducked. I didn't even see the highway, but I'd assume there was a line of cars trying to exit onto that street. Unfortunately, I didn't stick around and went back on my route, so I didn't see the conclusion to this idiotic situation, but I'm guessing the semi-driver called the cops. I wish I had to turn left at that intersection just to see the cops chew that toothless trailer trash road Karen out. Please don't be like this person and consider every other person on the road. It's been over 24 hours since this happened, and I'm still fuming, baffled. Thank you, guys, for reading my rant. The last story is titled, Always Make Sure to Park Properly Inside Your Lines. This is not a linear story and will probably always be ongoing. It's petty but I don't care. At my job we have a 4-level parking structure with regular and compact parking. We have a lot of employees and a lot of parking spots, but unfortunately not enough to go around. We have security here who is supposed to enforce the parking rules, which is standard stuff you would expect, like not double parking, parking in your lines, and having the proper parking passes for special spots. Unfortunately we have the 500+ pounds, I eat Doritos, Dr. Pepper, and Twinkies for all meals, kind of security guards, so they can't be bothered to do their job. There's plenty of employees who park over their lines all the time with a lack of consideration for those around them who need to find parking too. It sucks when you see an open space only to have to pass it up because your car doesn't fit and will scrape one of the cars next to you and instead have to keep looking while risking being late. My job is a stickler for tardiness, even being 1 minute late is enough to get a write-up. To get back at these a-holes I have simply been following the rules. They said stay in your lines and so that's what I do. Thankfully one of my cars is an old beater car I use for work, errands. It could use a paint touch-up, but I don't really care about the cosmetics of this car. Basically, I can park anywhere I need to without issue for the most part, even if someone scratches or dings me. So when I see spots at work and the jackasses are parked over the line into my spot, I just park in my lines as close to their driver's side as I possibly can without touching it, and if they complain, well, you're in my spot buddy, I don't know what to tell you. Needless to say, this has pissed off plenty of employees who have had to waddle their way across the passenger's side to the steering wheel. But hey, maybe you should consider not being an a-hole and have consideration for all those who need to find parking and get to work on time as well. Edit. I want to clarify something. I don't hate fat people, nor am I trying to fat shame. I have friends of all shapes, sizes, colors, orientations, and races, and do not think differently of them for it. I am describing these security guards as such because it's a common theme with them at my job. We have a lot of security guards at my workplace. A good majority of them are as I described in my story, and they literally have soda, chips, and some kind of processed pastry as all of their meals, and even double up the amount sometimes. With these ones, if you go to them for any kind of issue, whether it's in the parking lot or inside the actual workplace, they're very quick to come up with reasons as to why they can't help you, or just say they'll look into it, without anything ever getting done or standing up. The other security guards, which are the in-shape, average-shape security guards, will follow through with whatever you ask them to and give actual effort walking around the property. This just my opinion, of course, but when you work as a security guard or even a cop, I feel like it should be a requirement to be in shape at all times, since the nature of the job does have a lot to do with responding quickly to situations or potentially dealing with hostile individuals. Thank you for listening.